Liverpool, the capital city of culture.
Welcome to a Culture Show special coming from the Novus Contemporary Urban Centre in Liverpool. Tonight we'll be looking back at the city's year as European Capital of Culture. Over the past 12 months there have been a staggering 7,000 events in almost every field of the arts. It's drawn performers and audiences to the city from all around the world, and being Liverpool, controversy has never been far away. So 2 questions tonight. Have the past 12 months been a success, and what kind of long-term legacy will this year leave Liverpool? Coming up tonight, we speak to the major figures of Liverpool 2008.
Which of you shall we say?
The pressure on this has been quite extraordinary.
Liverpool has taken this opportunity of the Year of Culture, and you see the amount of life in the city.
We ask whether it was all money well spent.
Liverpool will never be the same again.
How will Liverpool 08 change the face of the city?
I think the sea is going to be Liverpool's future again. The 8 miles of docks behind me are being transformed into high-rises and coffee bars, trading in views this time, not spices and coal.
And the Liverpudlian view of the Capital of Culture year.
So long as it's got its imaginative capital, Liverpool should do just fine in future.
They should have more of these things, which I think they should, yeah. Should be on every year.
Liverpool beat 5 other UK cities for the title in 2003. And the long-awaited year kicked off with a massive launch weekend last January, with 800 performers and a crowd of 50,000 on St George's Plateau in the heart of Liverpool. The city celebrated its history and its people. It was an amazing start, watched by millions around the world, but what happened after that? Later on, I'll be speaking to the man behind the whole year's programme, Phil Redmond. But first, here's a look back at some of the major events of Liverpool 08. In March, top international choreographer Akram Khan brought his collaboration with the National Ballet of China to the city. Set in an airport departure lounge and with elements of street dance, Kathak and Tai Chi, Bahok explored the idea that we're all travellers, carrying our history and memories around with us. Sir Paul McCartney gave a one-off concert to thousands of fans at Anfield in June. Rousing a hometown crowd with some well-loved old favourites. In May, the Tate brought a little taste of Vienna in 1900 to Liverpool with its hugely popular Gustav Klimt exhibition. The first comprehensive exhibition of Klimt's work ever staged in the UK ran for 3 months, brought a record-breaking 200,000 art lovers to the Tate Liverpool, and even spawned a Viennese ball, where for one night only the city's aspiring dancers were trained to Viennese waltz around St George's Hall, accompanied by the Liverpool Philharmonic, conducted by Vasily Petrenko. In July, 62 vessels from 18 different countries sailed into the Mersey for the start of the 2008 Tall Ships Race. And 125 individually designed Super Lamb bananas popped up from Toxteth to Garston. In the autumn, the Liverpool Biennial returned to the city's streets and art galleries, with artist Ai Weiwei's crystal-studded spider spinning a web of light across Liverpool's exchange flags. And the crowds came out in force to witness the feat of artistry and engineering that was La Machine's giant spider as it roamed the city's streets for 3 extraordinary days in September. Classical royalty Sir Simon Rattle returned to his hometown to conduct a very special concert with the Liverpool Philharmonic. Liverpool's Metropolitan Cathedral crypt hosted a major exhibition on the father of modern architecture, Le Corbusier.
Speak.
And in November, Pete Postlethwaite trod the boards where he started his career, playing King Lear in a new production at the Everyman Theatre.
The barbarous Scythian, or he that makes his generation messes to gorge his appetite, shall to my bosom be as well neighboured, pitied, and relieved as thou, my sometime daughter.
We'll have more on some of those major events later in the programme. But first, what about the projects that got less of the hype? Organisers of the Capital of Culture aim to get as many Liverpudlians involved as possible. But did they succeed? Here's a look at 3 projects that put locals on the creative front line. One of the biggest cultural events in Liverpool's year were the so-called Super Lamb Bananas, a free public art spectacular based on Japanese artist Taro Chiezo's weird and wonderful sculptural combination of a lamb and a banana. 125 of these strange creatures, decorated by local artists and community groups, were unleashed on the city for 10 weeks, from June to August, and popped up from St George's Hall to Garston.
The cultural tourism that was going to neighbourhoods that would never ever see tourists, it was just incredible.
Liverpool was gripped by Super Lamb Banana fever, with trail maps on hand to help Super Lamb fans, young and old, collect a visit to each and every one of them.
I've seen the Super Fit banana, the Liverpool banana, the Everton banana.
So the one with the tails and banana and the others are lamb.
This one, Mandy Mandala Super Lamb Banana, was so popular that the city didn't want to let her go. So, at a charity auction, Phil Redmond stumped up £25,000 to save her and donated her for permanent display in Liverpool's World Museum. Earlier in the year, artist Patricia Lee got local kids involved in her mandala painting workshops in the community in Toxteth and then went off to create Mandy.
She was a symbol in Toxteth on the boulevard, and I just wanted her to be bright and colourful and beautiful and for everyone to love her, really.
When we actually heard that Mandy had been sold for £25,000, that was the biggest jump in the world. When I heard in the local community the expressions from children, they were excited. But then, when I seen 19-year-olds doing high fives for Mandy, what, 25 grand? Touch me, they were saying. I said, you know what? It's really touched the heart of the people.
Another project launched by Liverpool's Capital of Culture was Portrait of a Nation, a showcase of art, live performances and debates put on over 2 days at St George's Hall, which looked at the nation through the eyes of its young people. Liverpool may have won the title, but all was not lost for the other cities that bid. Each city, from Bradford to Brighton via the Highlands and Islands, asked its kids and youth groups to look at their identity, heritage and culture in relation to their hometown.
I think it's a really good project. I think it's such a big platform against the 17 cities to come and just show all their works. I think that's really good and it's really interesting. The project was about who do we think we are, and it was really about young people finding themselves through their heritage. So we looked at things like Windrush, Jamaican and African immigration into this country, and then we went all the way up to today and how the youth today feel about society.
Just saw the London piece, and that was brilliant, and that sort of hit home for me because my family are from the Caribbean and they were doing a lot about the Windrush, so that was nice for me to see.
One Capital of Culture project that shone a light on Liverpool's homegrown talent was The Rightful Owners of the Song, a one-off concert organised by composer Jonathan Raisin, which brought together the cream of Liverpool's pub singers with the Philharmonic Orchestra to celebrate the city's unique musical heritage.
I was very clear from the beginning that we wouldn't have auditions, it wouldn't be kind of an X Factor process, it was kind of the opposite of a reality TV talent show. This was really about going to find out about how people lived and sang and what it meant to them. And inevitably the selection has then been about, you know, people that I've got to know well. What's interesting about Liverpool is that it's a place where there's a really amazing culture of street music, pub singing. The origins of that are very complicated. A lot to do with the docks, to do with Liverpool having a relationship with America more than with the interior of England, and being a city that over the years has suffered a lot through economic degradation. Its own internal culture has been about survival of human spirit in the face of that, and music is a very important expression of that.
Baby, please, hold it.
I'm the youngest of 14. My mother, she came from Ireland, and my dad, he come from Freetown, Sierra Leone, West Africa. My dad used to play the guitar like Django Reinhardt, Stefan Capelli, and had his brother who used to play the banjo as well. And so he'd go into a pub in Liverpool, Toxteth, where we lived, and me and my brother Bernie and my other brother Bobby, we'd be outside, 3 little scruffy black kids, and we'd be singing and tap dancing and harmonising and everything.
As a child, an uncle would come home from the sea and he would have records that he'd from New York, which no one in England had heard yet. In the 50s and 60s, jazz, and then later American rock and roll, and later on soul and blues music, kind of came to Liverpool before it came to the rest of the country. This was this was one of the imports.
Just you and I, forever and a day. Love will not die, we'll keep it that way. Hang on, the stars will find a harmony one, two.
My family were all musical. My dad played the piano, the guitar, the accordion. My mum played the piano. Both of them were singers. We were always having parties in our house, and when we were kids we used to watch them all dancing around the living room and everything, you know. So I was brought up with music. So I've always sang, always.
What Margaret is the Ella Fitzgerald or the Billie Holiday of North Liverpool.
Working in a pub the likes of this, the oldest pub in Liverpool, it may seat about, packed, say, 60 or 70 people. And you're going on the Philharmonic Hall with like 1,700 people and a 72-piece orchestra behind you. So it's a different world, it's a totally alien environment to me, which I'm looking forward to.
Just can't wait. The Philharmonic Orchestra is something else. It's absolutely fabulous.
Margaret Doyle.
It seems we stood and talked like this before. We looked at each other in the same way then, but I can't remember where. Oh, where.
Going to the Philharmonic was the greatest thing that's ever happened to me, and getting up to sing was unbelievable. Just wanted to stay and do it all again.
So it seems that we have met before, loved before, and loved before, and who knows where.
People were coming up to me and saying, you know, you were great, and they should have more of these things, which I think they should. Should be on every year.
This is very specifically a project that's about how you articulate Liverpool culture within the Capital of Culture project, and it seemed really interesting to kind of just play with the extremes of what there is in the musical culture of the city.
Walk away and live.
life that's full with no regrets.
When you're coming out and you just hear that applause from the audience, the likes of the Philharmonic, your stomach just goes whoop, and it's something else. It's really something else. Scary, but nice.
The dream that can never come true. So be strong, reach the stars now. Walk away, walk on. If I heard your voice, I would beg you to stay. So don't turn around.
The people that were in the audience, it was one big family. We're all there for each other. It's happy days. Yeah.
You, I love you, but I told you, walk away. Walk on.
Coming up later, Liverpudlian musician Ian Brodie and Gemma Bodinay, artistic director of the Everyman Theatre, will be giving us their view on how the capital of culture managed to reach out to local communities. But before that, a look at an event that brought the city to a standstill. In September, Liverpool played host to a very unusual visitor. The city had never seen anything like it.
We had those reports earlier of what's believed to be some sort of alien creature found clinging onto the side of an office block in Liverpool.
The 50-foot, 27-ton spider, christened La Princesse, took 3 days to wade her way through the city. 200,000 Liverpudlians and tourists flocked to the streets to see her. Not since Beatlemania had anything captured Liverpool's imagination on such an epic scale.
Absolutely, utterly amazing.
I thought it was beautiful and very moving.
It's probably the best thing that's happened in this capital of culture year.
This spectacular piece of street theatre cost £1.5 million and was brought to Liverpool by Artichoke, the team who 2 years ago enchanted Londoners with the Sultan's elephant. The spider is the creation of Francois Delarosier and his company La Machine, whose workshop is based in Nantes.
When you see something very in movement and very high, you become a child. Your eyes change. When you pass in the streets, after, the street is different and the city is different.
It is fantastic and really transforms the way people view their cities.
Wonderful, wonderful.
Yeah, Liverpool will never be the same again. It's brilliant.
A couple of people have said to me, they think it's brilliant actually, that, it is a spider and it's not something soft and cuddly, Like London had its soft and cuddly elephants, but we're kind of a bit more edgy, aren't we? So we got our spider here.
This extravaganza was nearly 2 years in the making and a bureaucratic nightmare. Roads had to be closed, roundabouts had to be removed, and Liverpool's authorities had to be persuaded to come on board.
Any show on this scale that happens in public is going to be a challenge. I think what happens is that gradually over a process of maybe over a period of a year, people will come round to your way of thinking, will decide that instead of saying no, they'll stop really saying no and start thinking that it's something they want for the city.
It's really beautiful to see something so cultural in Liverpool.
It's probably one of the best things to happen in Liverpool, I think. It's very good indeed. Yeah. It's stunning, stunning.
And just as La Princesse attracted huge crowds in the city, the locals also gave a warm welcome to some of the famous Liverpudlians who came home to celebrate the Capital of Culture year. In October, Sir Simon Rattle returned to conduct the orchestra that first inspired him. One of the year's most emotional moments was the homecoming of a local hero. Sir Simon Rattle returned to his birthplace to play a very special concert with the Liverpool Phil.
This is the orchestra I grew up with. I learnt what an orchestra sounded like. I wanted to do the same piece I'd conducted in my first concert with the Phil 33 years ago, the Sibelius Fifth Symphony.
He exudes this amazing musicianship from every pore in his body, and to have that inspiration on the podium in front of you is a really amazing opportunity.
He is such an enthusiast. He's so young at heart when it comes to music, and he's full of ideas when it comes to conducting particular pieces, how to get the best out of the orchestra. And he'd of course got the history with Liverpool, so he, I think, felt that he was really at home here.
And what better way to make him feel welcome than by awarding him the Freedom of the City?
With no exaggeration, can rightly be called one of Liverpool's greatest living sons.
Well, it's about the nicest thing that could possibly happen. Look, I never even thought I would conduct in the hall, let alone anything that's happened, so no, I'm thrilled. Liverpool has taken this opportunity of the Year of Culture, and you see the amount of life in the city. But I can remember the time in the 80s when it was really grim here after the riots. And Liverpool went through really difficult times, and it's fantastic to see it on the ascendant.
Undoubtedly, one of the major events in the year was the staging of King Lear at the Everyman Theatre, directed by Rupert Gould and starring Pete Postlethwaite. As a production, it wasn't without its problems. We spoke to the star and director in the run-up to opening night.
The Everyman Theatre was established in 1964 to create works relevant to the people of Liverpool. During the 70s and 80s, it nurtured writing talent such as Alan Bleasdale and Willie Russell, and started the careers of an amazing array of actors: Julie Walters, Bernard Hill, Bill Nighy and Pete Postlethwaite. With plays like Three Sisters on Hope Street and Eric's the Musical, 2008 saw the theatre refocus on its identity at the heart of Liverpool, and brought the man described by Steven Spielberg as the best actor in the world, Pete Postlethwaite, back home to play King Lear in a new production by hotshot director Rupert Gould. Pete, so here we are in the Everyman,
Yeah.
which is obviously a very important theatre to you.
Yeah, incredible. Iconic, really, to me. An extraordinary space.
Am I right in thinking that you saw your first play here?
I did, yeah.
What was that?
The first three I ever saw professional, but we're all in the same season here. It was, Waiting for Godot, Look Back in Anger, and Murder in the Cathedral. All by the same company, all the same girls and boys doing it. And I just went, what? I mean, I had no idea what was going on to a certain extent. And Waiting for Godot, what's all that, you know, people in that. But then kitchen sink, you know, somebody talking the way I understood, and people ironing on stage. And then the complete reverse of that almost, Beckett's verse-speaking play. And I thought it was fantastic.
And did that inspire you to become an actor?
Yeah, I think it did to a certain extent, yeah. I thought what they're doing up there is fantastic.
And then, of course, you became part of the kind of very famed company in the kind of late 70s, early 80s.
Yeah, I did. That was an extraordinary time.
And who were you working with then?
Bill Nighy, Julie Walters, Tony Sher, Willie Russell, Alan Bleasdale, directors like Alan Dosser. It was an incredibly creative, wild, mad time. There again, you know, that's where I realised that acting wasn't just anyone for tennis and, you know, fur coat, no knickers, really. It was because everything we did had to respond and be responsible to the community that we were in. It had to mean something to Liverpool, and that was really satisfying.
And if you take that, which is your kind of formative acting experience, and then think about the Lear that you're doing here, I mean, I know it's a big jump, but one of the things I always think about Lear is you can see it as a socialist play.
It's a very, very elastic piece of writing. It'll take quite a lot of battering, and you still. But I think essentially what Rupert's gone for, I think, is that it's about a family to start with. It's about a dysfunctional family.
Which of you, shall we say, doth love us most?
At the start of Shakespeare's King Lear, the ageing monarch asks each of his 3 daughters to compete in complimenting him in order to secure their third of his kingdom in dowry.
Speak.
When Lear's favourite daughter Cordelia fails to flatter her father, it sets off a chain of events that unleashes madness and horror on the kingdom.
The barbarous Scythian, or he that makes his generation messes to gorge his appetite, shall to my bosom be as well neighboured, pitied, and relieved as thou, my sometime daughter.
And then it spirals off into the cosmic, really, into the kind of chaos that's released because of ridiculous decisions.
This isn't the first classic that Rupert Gould has reimagined for the modern stage. Gould has wowed audiences and critics with his radical, cinematic Shakespeares, and often casts homegrown Hollywood talent in the lead roles. In 2007, Gould's Macbeth had Patrick Stewart take the lead in a gory production with blood running from the taps, and unusually he set his version of The Tempest in the Arctic. But what's he got in store for Liverpool?
King Lear, Pete Postlethwaite, Everyman Theatre. It's a big deal. How do you approach something like that?
I'd seen a lot of wonderful kind of royal Lears and moving, epic Lears, but I felt that the Everyman, for all its wonders and joyful relationship between the audience and the actor, is not technically the most complex space. There's no real height, no wing space. A lot of the kind of trickery that one might want to use in more showy productions isn't available to you. And I think maybe self-consciously I wanted to do a kind of a dogma Lear, as it were. But when I started out preparing the show, that, you know, I'm halfway through my life, I hope, and I thought I'm a bit young to be doing this show, really, because it seems so much a play about old age to a certain extent and about getting old. But then I kind of thought, well, actually, it is an ensemble piece, and it is about youth's relationship to age, and I just tried to plug in, I suppose, to my own experience of being both a father and a child, and trust that Pete would bring a lot to the table as well, and the space, of course, as well, that the space would dictate to a certain extent the kind of production we were going to make. The set was based, actually, on a decaying late 60s football terrace in Burnley, but that looked like Epidaurus, you know, it looked like a kind of classical amphitheatre.
Eventually, you know, the vision that you're part of is a director's overall image. He's looking at the overall thing, and he's got his ideas, his own imagination. So, at times, even there are things that, you know, I might not necessarily choose myself. Then, you know, I've had to go, well, no, that's how Rupert wants to see it, and that's fine. And but it's hard.
In an unusual step, halfway into the play's Liverpool run, Pete admitted to the press that Gould's tricksy production had taken a while to settle into itself. But when it hits the London stage this month, this Lear should be one to remember.
Lear is one of the kind of seminal parts that an actor can play, but you can only play it once you're of a certain age. I mean, have you been kind of looking forward to playing Lear for a few years? Has it been on your list of things to do?
It kind of has, yeah. I suppose it always was. I loved it when we first did it many, many years ago when I was at college. It seems with this one, with Lear, that actually until you start going on the journey that he goes on, you can't really talk about it. You can intellectualise it. You know, back at home you can talk about it till the cows come home, but eventually you've got to go on that journey and experience that extraordinary arc of being king of the pile to absolute rock-bottom loony idiot.
Behold, yon simpering dame, whose face between her forks presages snow. The polecat nor the soiled horse goes to it with a more riotous appetite. Below the waist they are centaurs, the women all above, but to the girdle do the gods inherit. Beneath is all the fiends. There's hell, There's darkness, there's the sulphurous pit, burning, scalding, stench, consumption. Fire, 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 fire!
It is majestic stuff, it's extraordinary stuff. There's a line in Betchman's Summoned by Bells, his autobiography, his poetry, where he says, sometimes the gap between my desire and my skill was so immense I wonder I leapt at all. You know, and you think, well, that's about it. That sums it up. How dare you think that you can actually even...
But then how brilliant to make that leap.
That's what you have to do, I think, every night. You just have to hold your nose and leap, really.
Yeah.
And at best, hope for the best.
So joining me now is the artistic director of the Everyman and Playhouse Theatre's Gemma Bodinet, and Ian Brodie, of course, of the Lightning Seeds, and recently producer of, including local band, The Coral. So welcome to you both. How significant was that play for the Everyman this year?
We could never have met the expectation on Lear. It was fabulous, and I don't think any of us have any regrets or would have done anything differently. But the truth was the emotional impact of Pete coming back to more or less his home city, coupled with Rupert Gould, who is flying so high in his career, with the greatest play in the English language. It was in the European capital of culture. It was daunting.
It wasn't the kind of resounding success that everybody was hoping for. There were problems involved. How did you work through those? How did you...
That's sort of what the Everyman's always been about. It provokes debate, and that production provoked debate and was emotional. But every night there were people standing. Some nights everybody was standing. One night there was a Mexican wave. Liverpool loved it. Delivered.
Box ticked.
Big
well
tick.
done. OK, Ian, I'll bring you in here. How has your Liverpool 08 been? A success?
One of the things that I think has been a success is that I think it's changed the way people in Liverpool actually almost view the city and view themselves. You know, I thought the Lamb Bananas were very Liverpool. You know, it was like it fitted the place.
So, Gemma, you're nodding at the Lamb Bananas, I notice.
They were just joyful. They were just... It felt... You woke up one day and the sort of Father Christmas of sheep had been around Liverpool and just scattered these wonderful gifts for all of us. And why are they Liverpool? Because they're beautifully idiosyncratic.
What about the spider, which was also a great kind of feat on the streets?
Well, I went in the middle of 2 meetings. I dashed out and it was absolutely pouring with rain. And I was just suddenly surrounded... It felt like I was surrounded by the whole of Liverpool. We were all transformed into 7-year-olds. We were all just children.
Ian, what about you? Did you see La Princesse?
I did. I somehow had missed that it was going to happen, and I was ensconced in the studio, and I was going out for a sandwich, actually. And I got a bit of a shock. Yeah.
Hang on.
And I didn't know what was going on for a while. So it was a really confusing event for me initially.
And what were your other personal highlights?
The Klimt exhibition, I think, was a really good thing. And again, like, they do have great exhibitions down there all the time, you know, and it's, you know, it's not just suddenly sprung up to take down there.
What do you think could have been better? What do you think wasn't good?
Well, I'd like to have seen some things, I don't know, out into the outskirts of the city a little bit more, maybe, or something like that, you know.
I think one of the most moving and beautiful things for me in the capital of culture happened in the outskirts of the city, which is where a theatre company, a writer that we've been working with at the Everyman, Esther Wilson, had taken over a cinema in the Dingle. And it was this beautiful piece of theatre, very visual, very striking. But we were all sat on sort of temporary seating, freezing, and I was sat next to a little Liverpool boy in tracksuit bottoms and a T-shirt on his own. I think he was about 12. And he was holding a little mug of tea throughout it. And it was an adult show, and it went on late. And every so often he'd sort of nudge me and go, look over there, a good bit's coming up. Or, she's great, she's going to sing in a minute. The whole way through. And at the end, he sort of turned to me and said, are you anything to do with this show? And I said, no, are you? And he went, no, just love it. And I spoke to Esther afterwards. And she said, the first night we opened, he was outside. And he's just from the local estate. And he said, could he come in? And we said, of course, just sit on the floor. And he's been back every single night. How can you know what the legacy of culture is, what that will have done to that little boy's perception of life, what he'll do with his life, how he'll respond to a piece of theatre that he came to 10 times?
Ian, what would you like the legacy to be?
I think there's been a real awareness from people that they can maybe do things, and they've seen people come back to the city, Simon Rattle, you know, who have really gone out there and done it, you know. And, you know, so I would think the best legacy would be that feeling of empowerment for people here, you know.
What will you remember most from Liverpool 08?
Probably what I'll remember most is, you know, that it feels like everything's come full circle to me, and that it's almost like, hopefully, the beginning of, you know, a different awareness and a kind of... It just feels like something good's going to happen in the next few years, which is the best thing that could ever come out of it for me.
Gemma?
From January the 1st till now, I've felt part of an enormous team. There are too many individual moments for me. I am a lovey. I'm an incredibly emotional person, but it was an incredibly emotional year for me.
Thank you very much, Gemma Bodinet and Ian Brody.
Thank you.
Thank you. Later in the show, I'll be speaking to Phil Redmond, who's been responsible for shaping and organising the whole Capital of Culture programme, and asking him about how it's affected the future of the city. But before that, an 08 project that celebrated Liverpool's heritage. Of Time in the City is a film by Liverpudlian director Terrence Davies, based on his upbringing. Mark Kermode came here to meet him earlier in the year.
As you are now, we once were. James Joyce.
Of Time in the City is Terrence Davies' first film in 8 years, and for me, it's one of his finest. It's an intensely personal documentary, assembled mainly from archive material, with a soundtrack of music, quotations, and Davies' own reflections. It's by turns heartbreaking and hilarious, both a love song and a eulogy to Liverpool, the city of his childhood. Davies returned with me to Kensington Street, the street where he grew up, to talk about the past and how the city influenced his development as a filmmaker. When you're making the film, how do you go about actually assembling the material to bring that period back?
I don't really know. I mean, I had a sort of structure that I wanted. I knew there was an arc there. But as this material came in, it started to change, you know, and suddenly you realise you're working towards something that you didn't know what the meaning was. You have it sort of in subconsciously. It's the difference between fiction and documentary. Here I discovered the subtext after I put it together. And it was one of the producers, Roy Bolter, who said, actually it's about age, isn't it? Loss of innocence and age. And I thought, yes, that's exactly what it's about.
At the very beginning of Time in the City, there's that quote, you know, the happy highways where I walked and cannot come again. And there is that sense that that's exactly what's happened here. The streets that you walked literally don't exist anymore.
No, they don't. But they live inside me, I mean, with the most incredible intensity.
Piety has always played a part in Davies' films. A devout Catholic as a boy, he struggled to reconcile his faith with his homosexuality and eventually renounced God. Just along the road from his childhood home is the church he worshipped in as a boy. Whatever else one thinks about the church, it is absolutely racked, you know, with art and design and splendour. And there's something that I find incredibly moving about it. Does any of that still touch you in that same way?
No, it repels me now. I think it's all this empty iconography. It means absolutely nothing. And the years I wasted praying to these people who cares about St. Jude, for God's sake? You know, nobody with any sense. No, I'm repelled by it now. I just think it's a complete waste of time. If people want to believe it, that's fine. But it did me a great deal of damage, and I can't forgive that. Here I wept and prayed until my knees bled, but no succour came. No peace granted. You who damn but give no comfort, why do I plead? Why do you not respond, angel eyes?
So religion failed you at an early age, but you found another church, didn't you, in the cinema?
Yes, but I didn't realise that until actually the first time you interviewed me, you said it. You said, obviously you're going to the cinema was like going to church, and I'd never realised that before. You were really right, because it was like a religious experience. It was completely ecstatic, because I really believed what I looked at.
But when you're talking about it now, and you're talking about it with the excitement of a young boy, you're talking about it like it seems that that moment is still with you.
Well, all those moments are of the films I loved. You know, they burnt into me. And the first film I was ever taken to see was Gene Kelly and Singing in the Rain. And I remember only, because I was only 7, just the title sequence, and I wept through the entire sequence. And my elder sister said, well, why are you crying? And I said, because he seems so happy.
So, what of the future now that the Capital of Culture year is over? Well, the economy has changed radically since the city won the title in 2003, and organisers are now estimating it's brought an £800 million boost to the area. £4 billion has also been invested in major developments since 2000. Our architecture expert Tom Dykoff took to the skies to see how Liverpool is building on its past.
Well, let me tell you about a girl I know. She's my baby and I love her.
For European Capital of Culture, they've been splashing the cash to give Liverpool's image an overhaul. But I hope this is architectural rebirth, not just Botox.
To most of you, Liverpool probably means Anfield or the Beatles or Cilla Black. To me, it's about architecture, the most romantic and surreal in the country, and the finest skyline in Britain. Just look at that waterfront.
Liverpool's always shown off. All this was built on trade: sugar, tobacco, cotton and slaves, making this the second city of the empire. But Liverpool also built refined streets and elegant vistas. Liverpool's architects had no small plans. By its Victorian heyday, they decided this wasn't just going to be another grimy northern industrial city. This was to be a new Athens. And its high temple to justice and culture was St George's Hall. The hall was built by a complete unknown 20-something, Harvey Lonsdale Elms. It's said the effort killed him before it was complete. But to me, he left the city with what must be one of the finest 19th century buildings in the entire country, here in Liverpool.
Wow, incredible.
These were grand designs. Liverpool had become Britain's architectural innovator. It even had skyscrapers before Manhattan. I've always loved this building, Oriel Chambers, built in 1864, the world's first metal and glass office block. And Britain's first university students of architecture designed the fruity interior of the Philharmonic pub.
Even the loos are a work of art. They've got mosaics and marble, some arts and crafts delight, but the smell, woo-wee!
But in this most religious of cities, even beer came second to faith. Liverpool's Anglicans employed the greatest architect of the day, Giles Gilbert Scott, to build the largest cathedral in Britain at the start of the 20th century. Not to be outdone, the city's Catholics employed the other greatest architect of the age, Edwin Lutyens, to build theirs, its dome twice the height of St Paul's. But this was one grand design Liverpool couldn't build. Lutyens' dream collapsed in the Great Depression of the 1930s. The feeble cathedral built on top of his crypt in the 1960s was nicknamed Paddy's Wigwam. This was the beginning of the end. But in its year as capital of culture, Liverpool's show The Art of Architecture tried to clear the name of the much-maligned godfather of modernism, Le Corbusier. He didn't build a single work in Britain, yet it's his brutalist utopian vision that's behind many of our biggest eyesores, from sink estates to high-rise housing. The problem is we could only ever afford a watered-down version of his vision. The exhibition, though, shows his monumental achievement, the creation of an entirely new visionary language of architecture for the age of mass production. But for Britain and for Liverpool, we'll never really know what Le Corbusier's true modernist utopia could have been. It may once have been greater than other cities. It may have fallen further. It may be the last city in Britain to be truly regenerated. But by God, 2008 has been Liverpool's year. and the developers have gone into a feeding frenzy on the waterfront.
I think the sea is going to be Liverpool's future again. The 8 miles of docks behind me are being transformed into high-rises and coffee bars, trading in views this time, not spices and coal. Trading on that gorgeous sunset.
Of all Britain's cities, Liverpool's identity is the most distinctive. So why is the recipe for its future so depressingly familiar, so ordinary? There are 50 skyscrapers like these planned for the waterfront. Liverpool's new face could be anyone, anywhere. It's like a Botoxed bimbo. It's got no character, no distinction, no Liverpudlianness. Welcome to Dubai. This is comatose architecture, designed for the Frappuccino clones. It's all steel and glass. Offices, apartments, cafes, shops and more shops. Liverpool One, a vast shopping centre and bus station, at least uses quality architects. But to me it just looks like a wafer-thin stage set. What the city really needs is its old distinctive combination of sensitivity and showiness. The bling building might not be everyone's cup of tea, but brassy and cocky, it's definitely Liverpool. This is one city that doesn't need any more icons. The new extension to the Blue Coat Art Centre is exactly the kind of thing that Liverpool needs more of. Sensitive stitching together of the city's shattered fabric. Liverpool seems to have got over its trauma, but to me it's a changed character, like it's had a personality transplant. I think it needs to go back to its roots, its cockiness and arrogance.
Lately, I've been thinking how much I miss my lady. Our marinas in a calm.
I think they should preserve that stunning skyline, but don't crowd it out with frivolous, flash-in-the-pan architecture. Liverpool, don't forget what made you great.
Running through the grass for hours.
So a cautionary message there from Tom on the future face of Liverpool. But what about the city's cultural life after 2008? We asked 2 local artists for their views on the Capital of Culture year and the future. In a moment, poet Paul Farley, but first, musician and curator Hannah Peel.
I'm not originally from Liverpool, but I came to study here at LIPA, Paul McCartney's Institute for Performing Arts, 8 years ago. I've stayed because of the vibrant music scene that's always been in Liverpool and the art scene, but since the Capital Culture, this has all grown.
The Culture Year has given artists like myself both the reason and some of the funding to put on events that really would not have taken place without it. And it's also attracted interest from the wider national media. Some of the great places in Liverpool didn't receive any of the Capital Culture funding, and, not for want of trying.
However, because of the Capital Culture in the city, private investors have enabled them to develop and grow.
I really believe that venues like the Static Gallery, the new Elevator Studios would not have been discovered or come into their own without Liverpool 08. And hopefully in a few years to come they'll become even more established. One of my highlights of the year was putting on Liverpool's first Audiovision Festival at the Mersey Tunnel Air Vent outside the usual gallery setting.
We actually projected onto the front of this facade here using visuals, putting buildings from New York onto this building.
Audiovision was an experiment exploring the link between visuals and music, how they work together, how sometimes they can't, and when they do work together, how exciting that creation can feel.
In November I took part in a project called Cities on the Edge, which was a big project involving port cities like Liverpool, Marseille, Naples, Istanbul and Gdansk. The part of the project I was in was called Coming and Going, and it involved 3 musicians from Marseille with 3 musicians from Liverpool. And we were literally put in a room together, asked to create music, and then this resulted in a performance which we all took part in at the Static Gallery.
The Cities on the Edge project welcomed hundreds of European artists to Liverpool to share and exchange ideas and experiences. It used to be harder to get audiences for gigs and alternative music nights, But this year there's been a lot more support for the talent here, with attendance levels at concerts and exhibitions growing dramatically. 2008 has definitely opened up the cultural possibilities for Liverpool, and we probably won't see the biggest effects for years to come, but for me it doesn't stop here, because I'm off to Marseille to record an album with those musicians I met at Cities on the Edge.
Like any native Liverpudlian, I was made up to discover my hometown had been named European Capital of Culture in 2003. Returning to the city since then has like been visiting a giant time-lapse movie as the city has reconstructed itself. And it seemed entirely appropriate to me that the theme on opening night seemed to be construction, with all those high-vis jackets and shipping containers, out of one of which stepped Ringo Starr. But with a little help from his friends, the whole thing left me feeling slightly underwhelmed. Liverpool became a city of grand spectacle, an international shop window. But I began to wonder, what exactly did all those super lamb bananas have to do with culture? What did the Liverpool One shopping development have to do with culture? Or Le Machine's giant spider that brought the city centre's traffic to gridlock? Attempts are always been made to make art serve other purposes. Even that dreary phrase, culture as a major driver for economic growth. But culture happens by degrees, by a kind of trial and error. Sometimes a sense of homecoming has been palpable, like seeing Pete Postlethwaite take on Lear at the Everyman Theatre, or hear Simon rattle at the Philharmonic Hall, or watching Terrence Davies' cinematic poem to the city he once called home. I think it's way too early to start talking in terms of legacy, or that horrible word, outcomes. I wondered whether all the people living outside the city centre really got an invite to the party. But we can't second guess how 2008 will really leave its mark. For all we know, a kid who saw that giant spider might turn out to be a filmmaker or an artist or a poet in a couple of decades' time. And that's the great thing about culture, its unpredictability. Now that the gaze of the world has moved on, art and music and poetry will still happen here. Some of it will be as a direct result of 2008. Some of it will happen despite it. But so long as it's got its imaginative capital, Liverpool should do just fine in future.
Joining me now is Creative Director of Liverpool Capital of Culture, Phil Redmond. Welcome to the show, Phil.
Thank you.
What were your aims, and how far have you been able to stick to them and make things go the way you wanted?
I think the first thing I wanted to do was to sort of make sure that the programme that was already in place, you know, was actually sort of given the right publicity and the right sort of presentation. So that was my first thing, really, and then take a look at it and then just move pieces around the board to make it a bit more balanced. And when we had something like high profile, like a McCartney, just to make sure that there was something else going on within the communities at the same time. So they were the two things, really, you know, I really sort of wanted to get straight into.
Right, impossible question time. What would have been your highlights?
But if you kind of really want the highlight to me is to raise confidence in the aspirations of the people, and particularly the kids. And when I was running Brookie and Hollyoaks, we used to work on the 8-year-old child rule, which was that we could never do anything on screen that we couldn't explain to an 8-year-old. And this year I've been working on the 13-year-old rule, which is let's give them the confidence and the aspiration at the age of 13 when you've still got a chance, because after that they start developing themselves as Kevin a teenager and go their own way. And I think our legacy out of Capital Culture will be the confidence within those kids, because they can have seen through this year that you can do just anything you like, really, if you try, you know.
So, Phil, Liverpool won the commission in 2003, obviously an incredibly different economic landscape from the beginning of 2009. You know, how crucial has that, the fact that Liverpool got this within that period, been for the city?
When everybody started in 2003, look, in 2008, we were on that kind of economic trajectory. You know, the whole world was on this economic trajectory. Now, the credit crunch at the end of last year has actually probably made what we've done actually more significant, because what we've shown is that we can generate commerce from culture. the £800 million impact on the city has been more or less straight tourism. You know, I think actually what we've achieved this year has become very, very timely. So I think it's going to be very, very significant.
Liverpool's known as a very forthright city, and I'm sure that your local people round here have been giving you ideas all year. Have you met with anyone who said the capital of culture has nothing to do with me and felt outside of it? And if so, what did you say to them? What would you say to them?
Go back to Manchester.
Good answer. But, I mean, no, but more seriously, you know, I mean...
I think the answer is, if anybody in Liverpool now comes to me after 365 days, you know, of the project and says, there's nothing in it for me, there's only two answers. One is that, A, you haven't been listening, and B, you don't want to be involved. OK, so the future for you, I mean, we've heard that you're already working with the government on plans for a regular UK capital of culture. What can you tell me about that? Well, I think this is an idea that I put to Andy Burnham because I haven't seen the impact on Liverpool. Simply through being able to have a title, a badge that you can use as an excuse to both project your own culture, but also then to use as the focal point for all those other agendas like regeneration, education, health, etc. I said to Andy, you know, well, if we could actually sort of pull all these things together, that would give an opportunity for the city every now and then to actually do what Liverpool has done.
And finally, do you have, like, a moment in your own personal montage of Liverpool 08? Is there something that is, you know, a kind of lifted moment from you from all this experience?
8:45 on the Friday the 10th of January, you know, or 9th of January, you know. That was when we finished the opening, you know, and I saw the looks on the faces of the 35,000 people in front of me. And I knew that the city's shoulders had just sort of relaxed, you know, and I knew we were OK, and I knew we were going to be all right. That's the moment I'll always live in.
OK. Phil Redmond, for now, thank you very much, and congratulations on a great year, and good luck with the future.
Thank you.
OK, so that's it. Liverpool's reign as European capital of culture is over. Was it a success? Well, decide for yourself. For my money, Liverpool went for it, got it right, and did us all proud. The Culture Show is back tomorrow at 10 p.m. in Leeds with Armando Iannucci on his new opera, and in Harlem covering the inauguration of Barack Obama. Tonight, we leave you with some images from last weekend's Capital of Culture closing ceremony and some moments from the rest of 2008. Thank you, Liverpool, and thank you for watching.
So don't miss tomorrow night's Culture Show at 10. Next here on BBC2 University Challenge.
What do you see when you think of Argentina? Tango? Gauchos? Penguins?
Look at that!
A city centre slum. Intense football rivals.
They have football in the UK. Nothing like this.
Simon Reeve leads a new journey.
Feels a bit like the end of the world.
For a fresh perspective from the four corners of the world. Don't just visit, explore. A new series starts in Argentina, Sunday at 9 on BBC2.
His discoveries have taken me around the world. From the lecture hall to the mountain pass, they brought me understanding. They explain why some animals walk and some fly, why some survived and some did not. Join me as I explore Darwin's discoveries about life.
The genius of evolution.
Charles Darwin and the Tree of Life, coming soon to BBC One.
For 4 weeks, these people have been counting calories, following a strict diet and keeping an eye on their weight. In a bid